Hey friends, you know what? Giving all your things to the thrift store in the name of minimalism does not instantly a simple life make. But I'm going to help you understand 5 keys that you can implement right away to simplify your life, to live a more simple life. Thanks for joining me today. I am Miss Katie. Welcome to Heritage Ways, where we share content and do our best to honor home, celebrate heritage, and spread hope. Well, today I want to give you a little bit of hope and help for your home, for your life, for your mindset of how to live a more simple life. As a side note, I want to tell you what my shirt says in case you're trying to figure it out. It says, support your local farmer. All right. Well, so many people nowadays are trying to live a simple life. They are going back to the basics. It's not a new phenomenon. People have always, I think, striven to get back to the basics. Of course, you know, there was the, as they call it, hippie movement or so forth in the 60s and 70s, where folks went back to, I guess you call it the Mother Earth movement maybe, but they went back to farming and the home skills and that kind of thing. A lot of people, there's a resurgence of that today we're seeing, and that is awesome. There's a lot of people who have given their things away to thrift stores. They've sold things and they've taken off in an RV for the sake of minimalism and being free from stuff. That's the big buzzword or term lately, or phrase, being free from stuff. Well, this video is not going to tell you to give everything to Goodwill and then all of a sudden your life is free. In fact, I'm not a minimalist. I don't claim to be, and I don't want to be, and I don't plan to be. It is true that at this point in time we do live in an RV, but ours is more of a missionary mindset, if you will, and we did not get rid of all of our things. We did get rid of some things that excess that I didn't need or want, and we sold a lot, we bartered a lot, and we have items in storage for our next homestead, which we hope to live in the next year to year and a half, Lord willing. So I'm not going to tell you to give all your things away and then your life would be easier all of a sudden. I am going to tell you 5 ways that you can get started today to live a more simple life. Are you ready? Let's go.
So the first thing you've got to do is to define what the simple life means to you.
You know, we talk about, he and I, we talk about the Appalachian folks. We love the Appalachian area, the mountain area. We're kind of drawn to that lifestyle. We're interested in that. It's intriguing. And, you know, we and a lot of people look at those folks and say, oh, they had a simple life. I want that kind of simple life. I don't know if they would classify it as simple life.
Because it was a hard life.
It was a hard life. They worked hard. But what we see looking back and what we hear about and read about, it seems simple. So you really have to define, that's really number 1. You have to define, what does simple life mean to you? Are you searching for a slower pace? Are you searching to have less activities? Are you searching to have less stuff to keep up with? Is a simple life not having to go to the grocery store every week? Maybe.
Well, until you define what a simple life is to you, then there's no way you can figure out what you need to do to be able to have that simple life. A simple life means not necessarily an easier way of life, but just not being on the go all the time, and to an extent having less stuff. So, you know, simple life could be any number of things to any number of people.
To somebody living in the suburbs of the D.C. suburbs of Washington, D.C., they might want a life where they're not having to commute so much, so it just means to change careers. So number one is to determine and define what simple life or simple living means to you. Hey y'all, another way to simplify your life is this. Don't have car debt. Now, I know that's easier said than done. I know that. The first thing really is you need to make up your mind that you don't have to have the best and the finest of vehicles. Cars are not my thing. Mr. Patient, I'm sure, would love to have, the best and the finest. He likes cars and keeps up with all that, but I don't. So that makes it easier for us because cars are just not my thing. I don't necessarily stress a whole lot over what I drive as long as it gets me there and it keeps us warm and dry and so forth, which I say that tongue-in-cheek because my last car didn't. Now, I want to point out to y'all that this is how we did it. We did get ourselves into some car debt trouble early on in our marriage, and that was not wise or smart at all, and caused me to have to, both of us to have to work more. But specifically in 2002, when I was the director of a daycare, it was actually at that time the largest one in the county. And when I was hired on, it was a 24-hour gig. I mean, they were open 24 hours a day. But I worked about 60 hours a week. And the littles weren't even around. They weren't born yet. And we did have our three big boys who were younger at the time, and another young lady, a little girl, that we were at that time raising. So there were 4 kids, and I was not homeschooling, of course, and I was in between teaching and homeschooling. So I had that job, and the kids went to that daycare. I didn't see them because they were in their classrooms at the daycare, and Mr. Patient would come in after work, pick up the 4 kids, and take them home. And a lot of times he would bring me my supper, or we wouldn't see each other for a good, probably 9 to 10 months of that year. We just went like that, from him working 40 hours and I was working about 60 hours. So, but the point is, we had to make that sacrifice because we knew we wanted to homeschool, and we wanted me to be home and not work outside the home anymore for the rest of our, foreseeable future. So what we did is we committed to that. We knew there was an ending point. My sister always says, you can do something as long as you know there's an ending point. And we knew there was an ending point, and the ending point was that we would pay off our 2 vehicles we had at the time, our Toyota van and Mr. Patient's truck. So, it was funny, but it wasn't funny when Grandpa would ask the kids, when does Mama get to quit her job? And these little bitty kids would say, when our cars are paid off. So they all knew that's what Mom was working for. Dad's money that he was making was going to pay the bills and our living expenses and all of that. And then mine was strictly going to pay for the 2 cars. So we had to make that sacrifice, and that's not ideal, but that was done. And it was a great, looking back, what was that, 17 years ago? And we have not had a car payment since. We don't have those same 2 vehicles anymore. Because when our family size doubled, we got a Suburban, and we got that on Craigslist. We had prayed for a bargain. We got that on Craigslist, and we drove that thing till literally, it was falling to pieces. And when it rained, my feet would get wet because it rained in, and it was just moldy and nasty, and the windows didn't work. It was really bad shape, almost a health hazard. And finally we got rid of that and got the car that we're in now for me to drive around town. And again, Mr. Patient got this on Craigslist. The truck that he drives, the truck that we currently pull the RV, his vehicle is, it was a blessing from the Lord. And we paid cash with that after we sold our house, but it was a deal. So that's just another tip of ways you can live more simply. Try to make the sacrifice and get those big things paid off, but especially cars. You know, house, I know that's a different story, but try to pay off the cars and not have car debt if you can help it. Make a short-term hard sacrifice, and then it will pay off in the end like it has for us. The third way is to gradually learn a time-honored skill or recipe or method in the kitchen. You pick it. You pick the recipe, you pick the skill, something you have always wanted to learn. It can be super easy or complicated. You pick it. It can be how to bake white bread or wheat bread or any bread. It can be a little more complicated than that and make sourdough bread. You can learn to, if you don't know how to cook at all, you're new in the kitchen and you're just used to going 90 miles an hour in your career, it can be something very simple, learning to make a particular casserole or any level of skills. Wherever you are, we can always learn more, right? So just learning and taking time to appreciate the process of learning a new skill, a new recipe, a new method. Maybe you want to learn how to ferment. Maybe you learn fermenting vegetables, fruits, kombucha, and other things like that. You can learn one new skill or recipe per week, or one per month, or just dedicate that I'm going to learn this and perfect this until I've got it, however long that takes. Maybe you want to learn how to make tea, sweet tea, instead of buying it at the grocery store. I mean, honestly, just taking time, deliberately, intentionally learning how to make something new, and then practice that until you've got it down pat. And that will let the process of that be enjoyable, not stressful, because the idea is to have a more enjoyable and less stressful life. Not to make it more complicated. It might seem like that at first, but you have to get to the point where that process, that action leads to a more simple life. So take that step. Let me know down below what you decided to do as far as the step of learning a new recipe or method in your kitchen, or as it relates to your meals. Hey y'all, the next way to live a simpler life is coming to you a little bit ironically today, because this is our day of rest and we're not at home resting.
No, we're not.
The next point in our 5 points of how to live a simpler life is to have a day of rest, an intentional day of rest. For so many years, we have always observed Sunday as our day of rest. Well, I think more in a mindset than actually resting. There is some scientific evidence and physical evidence, rather, that the body actually needs to rest once every 7 days. Now, we don't want to encourage you, whether that is your Sabbath, your Saturday Sabbath, or Sunday, but we want to encourage you to observe, intentionally set out and plan a day of rest. Now, in the past, like I said, it hasn't always been a day of rest for us, because I grew up a preacher's daughter, and so we were at church twice a day, and then we had other activities, whether it was a baby shower, whether it was visiting at friend's house, which can be restful, or whether it was some other activity that needed to happen on the day of rest. But you don't have to be a minister's family to have a back-to-back, rush, go,
Yeah.
full day on a day of rest. When we had our 3 big boys at home, we do have 6 children now, but we had our 3 big boys at home, and now we have our 3 littles at home. We have gotten to the point in recent year or two that we're like, something's wrong here. We're not resting, and we're tired by Monday morning. So we've tried to be intentional, more intentional about resting. Now it's looked a little odd because we have been on the road, so it'll look different when we actually settle and have another home church, or I don't mean house church, a church that we go to regularly, or a house church, whatever that would look like. But we've tried to make some changes and be intentional. So for example, today, two of our children are in the local Christmas parade. And we knew it was going to be rush because they have a church party to attend after the parade. So we made some adjustments. We made some changes this morning to our schedule. We still worshiped, and we did so online with our home church, and the children still went to their Sunday school class, physically went, but we made changes intentionally because we knew it would be rush, and we were trying not to have everything just back to back, bumper to bumper. Even doing that, we still didn't even get lunch.
Yeah.
Because I misunderstood the time the kids had to be at the parade. But we just want to point out that another way to have a simpler life is to have an intentional day of rest. You choose what day that is. If you're not a religious person, that's fine too. I'm not necessarily even talking religion here or for faith reasons, but just for physical and mental and emotional reasons. I have a friend whose day of rest is on Monday. She, I'm not saying she doesn't go to worship on Sunday or Saturday or whichever, but she actually stays in her, allows herself grace to be relaxed, stay in her pajamas on Monday to do what she wants to do for herself to rest. And she's a very, very busy, wonderful woman and gets a lot done. But I'm encouraged by her example to have an intentional day of rest every Monday.
Well, and thinking about the physical part of a day of rest, as she mentioned a minute ago, I know me personally that as I'm going throughout the week, for whatever reason, my physical body on Sunday, it just kind of, it goes, I don't know what the
You go
term,
dormant.
I go dormant. I like just kind of zone out. But I mean, there's a lot of times on Sunday where we'll get up in the morning, we'll go to worship, and as far as my alertness, it's all I can do to get back home because my body feels like it's just trying to shut itself down for a while. But yeah, there is scientific proof about how our bodies need that day of rest, and as we've learned about this, I kind of see my body doing that on Sundays. Now it just happens, that's just the day it happens to be on for me, but so there is scientific proof. I don't have the scientific proof, but there is scientific proof out there about how your bodies does go into a state of rest. And when your body goes into a state of rest like that, we need to find ourselves in a position to where we can listen to our bodies and take that physical rest that our bodies are telling us we need to do.
I have read that your heartbeat slows down on every seventh day, and I've read things like that. All right, so that is the next point in living a simpler life, is to have an intentional day of rest. Number 5 on the list of 5 things to instantly do to achieve and begin achieving a simple life is to drop expectations, greatly reduce or drop expectations of loved ones and those surrounding you. Now, I know that sounds like a crazy deal. That is a crazy suggestion. I have learned that it is much more fun and it's easier and it is more peaceful for everybody if I would just be surprised rather than disappointed. And what I mean by that is that if we have no expectations as far as holiday season and receiving gifts, or and I don't mean, I mean expectations as far as what we expect to receive from somebody. So, you know, don't put your excitement and your hope in what you think you're going to get for your birthday, or you have big plans in your head of what your spouse is going to do for you for Mother's Day, or you have big expectations of what your children are going to do at Christmas time, or they're all going to be there for Thanksgiving or whatever. It is not a negative thing for us to greatly reduce or even eliminate expectations. In fact, a friend of mine who has her doctorate and she teaches at a popular Tennessee university, and she has said the very same thing. It is much more pleasant and peaceful if we mamas can just be pleasantly surprised, as they say, rather than disappointed because we didn't get what we thought we deserved or we thought we were going to get as far as a visit or a phone call or a gift or what have you. So greatly reducing expectations or even eliminating expectations. Mull on that, think about that a while. But that is number 5 on our list of 5 ways to simplify your life. So thanks for watching today. And just remember, one act like donating everything that you own to the thrift store does not instantly a simple life make. I hope these more reasonable ways have helped you today and given you something to think about. Philippians 4:11 from God's holy word before we part today. Now that I speak in regard to need, for I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. And I hope you'll take time to share your story with someone else, to listen to someone else's story, and by doing so, I think we can cultivate more of an atmosphere of grace and peace in our homes, our communities, the world. We will see you next time, friends.